So how do we deprogram ourselves from ego? Ego is manipulating and controlling us, and we don't want to let that happen anymore. You don't need to show resistance to ego or to fight it. We do live in a society that is very ego-based, and we're brought up learning right from wrong, good versus bad, moral versus immoral. And we are going to have thoughts based from ego. And that's not the problem. It's when we act on them, and it takes practice to not react from ego. So when we look at ego work, we need to understand that ego is protecting us. It won't go away and will activate in times to keep us safe. Ego work is when we identify ego as separate from our true self and how you responded previously from ego. A really simple and easy technique is to name the ego. When you think you're responding from ego, you can name it. So my ego's name is Kim. So I get to say, there's Kim, she's hurt, she doesn't feel accepted, and she doesn't feel loved. The purpose of naming her is that you're saying she's separate from me. But it is me, Lou, who can make a different choice to Kim. And you can start to identify how Kim responds in life. And your ego is telling you a story that your thoughts, ideas, and words are not good enough. And the ego's decision will reinforce that you're not good enough. So the first thing you need to do is to recognize and be aware of the patterns in your behavior. So to starve the ego by looking at thoughts, recognizing its ego, and don't get sucked in. Make a different decision. Behave differently. When you make some space between ego and yourself before you respond, if you actually dig into the ego's question, you're going to realize it's negative and there's not much truth in it. If you give yourself the time to observe what is happening, you're going to be able to respond rather than react. This might take hours or days. A rational response rather than an irrational one takes a little bit of time. So you also need to come to the understanding that the other person can have a different reality. Don't hold on to that expression from the ego. And then you can move towards balance and peace. A really healthy strategy is to forgive yourself and others so that you can look from a different perspective. You can actually relate and say, gosh, I used to react like them. And they are simply unaware at this stage that they are reacting from their ego. Be more understanding and let them be who they want to be and accept them for who they are. Some helpful tips are: never reply when you're angry, never make a decision when you're sad, and be aware of making promises when you're excited. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a process and it takes lots of practice. You don't want to kill the ego. You can't get rid of it. It does function in our life as protecting us when we're not safe. But we need to learn to live with it and separate from it to make better choices. So there's 4 stages of ego. And the first is where there is an absolute lack of ego awareness, or really you're fairly unconscious. And many people aren't really aware or understand what an ego is, and that Ego is about, we think who we are. We're often reactive, defensive, and challenged. And if someone has a different reality to yours, you can argue with them, emotions get touched, and you can be triggered and react not in a great way. The second aspect of your awareness of ego is that you are starting to waken up and you are aware of it, and you have an internal dialogue from who we are, and you're aware of this endless story from the ego, and you're starting to notice how repetitive your thoughts are, and you're really observing them, but you're still reacting to them, and that's okay. And you might still be getting angry and screaming. The third stage of being aware of your ego is where you really are the conscious witness. So you're maintaining the position of being the conscious witness. And when ego is telling you the story that someone's disrespecting you or they're not appreciating you, you can sit in that witness position with new awareness, and you're not reacting or screaming, etc. But you make a new choice. And this is a responsiveness stage. The story's still running with the ego, but there's more space to allow you to formulate a new way to react and respond. And you can make new choices because there's more space. So you're not repeating the past of how you would react. And the fourth stage is ego integration. And this is really our life goal, where we can maintain awareness that we are just consciousness, and you're really not shifting back into the reactiveness of the story. And what you need to understand is that throughout the stages of ego, it doesn't just move from one to the second to the third. You can move back and forth between stages, and we're a bit like an onion. As you pull one layer off and you become a little bit more authentic, you find another story and another reaction that you need to address. So you can move between the stages. Sometimes you're reacting, and other times you can hold space. Ego work is so important. And remember, we'll all make mistakes and we'll fall into ego, and we're learning. And you're working out how you're reacting and you're responding. So nurture yourself, and remember that you can reset, restart, and refocus as many times as you need to. Be well. Thank you.